was pretty bad. There were markers that were basically parallel with the ground. I'd say about 70% of the veterans markers, you couldn't even read the name of the individual.
The conditions here at Hillcrest Cemetery, as bad as this looks, aren't nearly as bad as they used to be.
So there was no respect for these individuals who had given so much for our country, and while giving to our country by serving, they're being discriminated against. So that was heartbreaking for us.
I didn't even know it was here. And then we all get to see our grandfather and great-grandfather. I mean, people don't realize how much we contributed to this country.
This is the largest cemetery in Anderson Township. It was incorporated like in 1929. I think the first burials were in 1930. The last burial that we know of was sometime in the 1980s. My name's Todd Mayer. I am the current board president for the Coalition to Save Hillcrest Cemetery. And I saw an article about the cemetery and, you know, some of the challenges they were having at that time. And I just thought it would be a perfect opportunity for us to come out and volunteer.
We got involved in the restoration back in 1994 when I started working for Anderson Township.
Vicki Earhart's 16-year-old son actually filled out the order forms for the new headstones.
I brought my son out here when the headstones were delivered, and he traced the names on one of the headstones and he began to cry. And that to me was incredible, that he realized what he had accomplished at that point.
My name is Vicki Earhart. I'm the Anderson Township Administrator. So the Lancaster brothers donated some land for this cemetery. The Hamilton County Commissioners purchased some plots there for veterans that were indigent or veterans that didn't have any family that were buried at Hillcrest. The most concerning thing is when the cemetery was originally founded, there were farmers that lived around that cemetery that opposed the fact that the cemetery was even being considered for Black folks in Anderson Township. At that time, Blacks were not allowed to be buried in cemeteries where white people were buried. There was segregation. It was important to have a final resting place, especially for the veterans that served our country. The Lancaster brothers, gracious that they donated the land, but it ended up where they didn't maintain the cemetery, they didn't take care of the cemetery, and over the years it continued to deteriorate.
You know, once I got here and, you know, saw what historical aspect of the cemetery was, and just looking at, you know, the service members that are resting here, and looking at the disrepair and the challenges of taking care of 18 acres. We have, you know, close to almost 3,000, you know, service member graves. And that, you know, going back, our oldest veterans are from the Civil War.
It was so upsetting to go to Hillcrest, the condition of it back in the early days. And being on a hillside, it was a beautiful, beautiful piece of land, lots and lots of trees. But over time, that hill started to slide. And a lot of the individuals that were buried there were buried in wooden coffins, or they were buried in vaults with wooden vaults, or it would be some type of rudimentary vault with a metal cover over the top.
I like to tell people when you walk, and I love walking the cemetery because of the views and just it's a peaceful place. And when you read a tombstone and you see some of the historical military units, and then you look at the dates and you can kind of put two and two together. One of my favorites is Lou Jones. Lou served in the 10th Cavalry, which was one of the 4 original Buffalo Soldier units. And he was an A troop. And he was at the Battle of San Juan Hill. So, you know, here's a soldier buried here that was in the presence of future General Jack Pershing and future President Theodore Roosevelt. You know, they're all within 200 yards of each other charging up that hill.
The turn of the century saw Theodore Roosevelt and his famous Rough Riders return from the war in Cuba.
So a very significant event in U.S. history, and with very significant, people that contributed to America. Here's old Lou Jones, running up that hill, and part of that great fabric of America story.
When we came back from Vietnam and from World War II, we couldn't be buried in national cemeteries. That was very painful to know that we went over and fought for our freedom, that we were not recognized as heroes over here. James C. Battle III, the owner of J.C. Battle and Sons Funeral Home, I saw a lot of veterans when they came back from Vietnam, and they were taking off their uniform before they even got off the bus or the plane. My grandfather came from Newport News, Virginia. He and my grandmother are here in Cincinnati. And in 1933, he decided to start his own business. So we continue to look at what we can do to keep the legacy going. Me and my brothers, we made a pact that every veteran coming through our portals at this funeral home, we were going to give them all the propers on the way out.
The Association for Hillcrest was incorporated in 1929. And I understand that at that time, no blacks were buried anywhere except up in Dayton National Cemetery. So they had to have a place after the Civil War to bury the black veterans. Services that were conducted at Hillcrest before I was born was probably about at least over 1,000.
Each time you have a veteran funeral service. That is one of the biggest honors because we have given up our lives for our country. And we should be recognized for that.
We've been here probably since the early 1900s. We have 3 generations of military, the Spanish-American War, Filipino War, World War II, and Vietnam vets. So my grandfather was a proud soldier. We always knew that my great-grandfather's name was Mansfield, but we didn't know too much more about him because by the time my dad was born, he had been deceased.
I just happened to run his name on the internet one day, and it came up. He was buried in Cincinnati at Hillcrest Cemetery. And I called, and they knew exactly where his marker was, and I was kind of shocked. And then I found out he was a Buffalo Soldier, and that really got me going. And then when I called the cemetery, they actually had a picture of his tombstone. So I called my cousin, I said, guess what, man?
It was amazing when he said that. And I've always wanted to get into Black history, little bits and pieces as it go along in my life, through TV or whatever. About Buffalo Soldiers, I was amazed.
I think it's profound. I went to Ancestry.com to see if I could find more out about him. And just knowing that we were able to find a census with his information on there, as well as his draft cards, his marriage license, as well as, the distinction of where it said race, it said mulatto. They were fighting for freedoms that weren't necessarily afforded to them at the time, right? And they pledged their allegiance to this country, but they weren't allowed to have the same benefits.
That's all I could think about for weeks, even up to this time. A Buffalo Soldier, my grandfather. The first thing I could not believe. I said, he was here? He actually is buried somewhere here? Yeah. Oh, we going. We going.
For Union Baptist Church. This is Celebration Sunday for Union Baptist Church. A church that has been on the move for Christ for 194 years. Give God the praise. Hallelujah.
Union was chartered on July the 21st, 1831. It is the oldest African American Baptist church in Cincinnati. It was one of several predominantly African American Baptist churches that existed in this community upwards to around 1876. My name is Orlando Benjamin Yates. I am the senior pastor here at Union Baptist Church of Cincinnati. In 1864, Reverend Newman, who was pastoring then, purchased 16 acres at Price Hill for burial grounds that African Americans might have a decent place to be buried. That cemetery still exists today on Cleves-Warsaw Pike. There's also United Colored American Cemetery, was received and taken upon as a responsibility by the former pastor, Reverend Page. In regards to Hillcrest, the Union Baptist Church has never owned Hillcrest Cemetery. The record of history is that Union owned some approximately 5 acres of adjacent to Hillcrest Cemetery. At one point in a church conference, the church voted to gift, 5 acres that we own to the Anderson Township.
The importance around having our partnership with Union Baptist and having them deed over the remaining plots was to give the coalition complete, basically, ownership of the cemetery at that time, that we could now approach Anderson Township to ask them to take over the cemetery. So that enables us to stretch our dollar to continue to take care of the Cincinnati property. And that was incredible work. We had 2 large groups come in, Duke Energy and GE, that really helped us clear that area out.
I think over the 5 years that we have been going there, we've sent right around 1,000 employees to the cemetery. Marcel Alvarez, I am the co-leader of GE Aerospace's Veterans Network. Upon first seeing the cemetery during my first visit, I can't describe how it felt to see tombstones of warriors and the condition of the cemetery that it was in. Just being on the ground there and being on those hallowed grounds inspired me to mobilize people in my company to do what we can to help. So after seeing the conditions at Hillcrest, we quickly put a plan together of focusing on several areas. 1, cutting grass. 2, removing any kind of obstacles, down trees, falling trees were necessary, and then realigning tombstones, because some of the tombstones were at a point where they were no longer straight. They were falling or prepared to fall onto the ground. So in total, over the past 2 years, about 20% of our total volunteer hours have gone specifically to Hillcrest Cemetery. And I'm not just proud of what our employees have given, I'm also proud of what other companies and organizations have given as well. We talked about WLWT being there.
Hillcrest Cemetery is one of 3 segregated cemeteries in the city of Cincinnati, and Private Lang here served in World War I. Thanks to volunteers and friends of Hillcrest, the cemetery is getting new life.
And for our employees at GE Aerospace, especially our veterans, they feel that sense of purpose, being a part of a mission greater than themselves. And at the end of the day, there is something to be said for giving more than you receive. So legacy is a big part of that. We want to ensure that they are not forgotten.
All right, so we are on our way to the cemetery.
They did a good job with that cemetery.
So I wonder, like Mansfield, like I wonder what his journey was like.
Yeah, he was a young man.
Right.
And what made him come to Cincinnati? I mean, did he have any relatives here?
Right. Or did he just kind of get here by?
And then jumping off point. Somebody said he was a hobo, which is how a lot of people traveled in them days.
One of them trades.
Yeah. Grandma saying he must sound like a bootleg joint, but said she was cooking, and he wanted to know who made them biscuits or something. And they went back and introduced him to Grandma. Rest is history.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, we can walk down there and walk up there. Get up at that. I mean, yeah, you can, but the footing might be a little bad. Hi, how are you? Yeah, I'm Todd. And Alan, he came with me. Yeah, that was Shelley that missed you. Oh, it was? I was the one on Facebook. Yeah. Oh, you the face that there? Oh. Yeah. Okay. I thought you're Karen.
I'm Karen. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Let's go see him.
Grandpa, here we come.
Who are these strange people?
There's going to be a lot more. You probably said it took you long enough to find me.
You know what, though? You found me. And that's what matters.
When we started our trek up the hill here to the gravesite, I think what was going through my mind is, the question we asked, I think, how did this man of color get buried out here so close to Coney Island here? He wasn't even allowed to go. So that was interesting. And not only that, but just looking at my dad walk up here, right? That it gave me chills. I don't get chills often, but that brought a lot to me to say, hey, this is really important to us as a family.
So there's Mansfield.
Wow.
Mm.
His name is spelled correctly and everything.
Can't even get him to spell it correctly now. Wow.
I still get goosebumps when I see that, man.
I'm looking at my grandpa and my brother, because my brother's name was Mansfield. We knew that he got it from him, but just to see the name brings me back to my brother. He's no longer here.
I'm a great grandpa now. And maybe coming out with my daughter and my niece, and maybe they can bring their kids out here one day, or grandkids, and say, this is one of your ancestors. Contributed something to this country.
This is my brother. This is my brother right here. He served.
Right.
He said it. He said he contributed significantly to our country's history. And when you put the uniform on, no matter, color, creed, religion, anything, that's where we get E Pluribus Unum from. Out of many one, and that's what the service of our country's about. This is exactly why we all do what we do when we come out here. I'm here today as a representative of all the volunteers from our different groups that come out each year to really maintain the cemetery.
My call to action for Hillcrest would be focused on the local companies in this region. Follow GE Aerospace's lead. Mobilize your volunteers, spend your hours there. You're going to have a great impact, not just on the folks that are interred there, but the families of the fallen who continue to visit.
Maybe the volunteers can start reaching out to some of the families, right? Or trying to find them and say, come help us, because this is a huge place.
We have a big project going on where we have 71 graves here of veterans that don't have a tombstone. So we're in the process now of ordering those tombstones through the VA, and then once they arrive, finding volunteer groups to come out and emplace them.
Well, for the future of Hillcrest, again, I hope that we can continue to maintain it And I'd like to see the roads repaired a little bit. These individuals who gave so much to the country are being recognized. They have headstones. Their life and their service to the country is memorialized on that headstone.
Well, my hope is that people will acknowledge them and that they will go out and find those cemeteries and clean them up as if they're in your own backyard.
We have to be able to set up the cemetery for success in the future. So really, you know, our budget or the money that we've raised is forming an endowment to the township has taken over parts of the maintenance for the cemetery, which is great.
For all of those who gave their life for the cause of this country, the veterans and others who are buried at Hillcrest Cemetery. Cemeteries are sacred ground.
This prayer, it just simply honors those veterans every time we have a burial. A soldier's prayer. Guide and protect this soldier, O Lord, as though hard times of war we travel. Give us strength for the battle, hope for the future, and courage to face the unknown. Keep this soldier safe from harm as we pray for peace.
This is for you, Grandpa. Yeah. This is for you, Grandpa.
Well, I live this, mate. That's perfect. That's nice. Beautiful.
I got to have a picture of that.
I think you owe him a salute.
Nice.
Yeah. Thank you for your service. Wow. That's something, man. Yeah. I never knew my grandpa.